A bell that means safety. A marriage that means funding. And a storm that means truth. When I rang it 3 times, a boy's life hung in the rope. Heat left the rocks in slow sighs. Juniper Hale crouched by a fence post and watched the wind. A red cloth tied to the wire leaned north, then east, never steady. She marked the shift on a folded map and traced the dry river with her pencil. On the ridge, a bell rope moved through. No one had touched it. A gloved hand tested the knots and let the rope fall. The man kept his hat low and his coat close, studied the yard, and turned toward town. Juniper put the map into her pocket. The wind had changed twice since noon. Flat clouds bruised at the base hovered far off. The school board wanted stability before they would release funds. A roof that did not leak. A room that stayed. A teacher who did not run when the sky came down. She had said yes to all of it. Footsteps sounded on hardpan. A man came through the gate. "Miss Hale," he said. "Mr. Morrow." He looked past her to the bunkhouse, the tarps, the wind vane she had built from a spoon and a nail. "You keep watching the wind," he said. "It tells the truth sooner than people do." "School board meets at dusk." "I know. They will ask for a promise I cannot make." "What promise?" "That no child will be caught out when the storm breaks." She touched the pocket with the map. "No one can make that promise." Reed Morrow set his hat back on. "You can get close," he said. "Closer than most." She waited. "My sister's boy stays with me," he said. "Tate. The council says a single man with a ranch is thin shelter. They also say a school that shifts like a camp will not hold. They want one answer for both problems." Juniper said nothing. "You need a place that will not move when the rain comes," he said. "I need the council to stop looking at the boy like he is a stray calf." His eyes met hers. "We could help each other." "How?" she asked, though she knew. "A paper marriage," he said. "Quiet, plain. Bring your school here to the ranch. I will make room, supply wood and water. The council signs the funds. They leave my nephew be. When the season breaks and your work stands, we part if you wish. No demands." Juniper thought of the vane, the map, the bell she meant to raise by the corral. She heard children's feet on boards that did not yet exist. She also saw a ridge of graves where choices had come too late. "What I ask," she said, "is mine to ask and not small." "Ask it." "The bell goes up," she said. "If the weather turns fast, we ring it and riders seek shelter. I will keep a log. No one cuts that rope. I will have a cellar for drills. If you see waste, tell me. If I see danger, I'll tell you. We do not lie to each other about sky or ground." Reed's face did not change, but something in him eased. "Done," he said. "And I keep the board from turning your name into gossip. That is not a small thing. It is the cost." They crossed the yard without talking. At the bunkhouse door, Juniper pushed it open and let the hot dark breathe out. Dust and old rope. The crate held slates and a coil of new cord for the bell. Her fingers rested on the cord. "Where is the boy?" "Helping Pete mend a gate." He glanced at the low hills. "He keeps watch at night when he thinks I am asleep." "What does he watch?" "The place where his mother is not." The words were quiet. "He does not need a mother replaced. He needs the shape of days. A bell he can hear. Lessons at a set hour. Boots by a door." Juniper looked at the sky. The purple under the clouds had darkened. "They will talk," she said. "They already do. I have no wish to be saved." "I have no wish to save you," he said, "only to stand in the same weather and not lie." She let out a breath. "We go to the board at dusk," she said. "We will tell the truth we can." "A quiet arrangement?" She touched the cord. "The storm I bring will be one you can stand." Wind moved through the mesquite and brought the smell of rain. A man in a coat walked toward town. His steps were patient, his purpose set. The ridge kept its silence. Juniper tied the cord around her wrist. "Come," she said. "Help me lift the post while the light holds." The sky over Ash Mesa changed color as they walked. Gold turned to the blue of bruised fruit. A long, low wind pressed the grass flat and let it rise again. Juniper kept the cord around her wrist and counted the beats between gusts. Reed matched her pace without speaking. The town lights came on one by one like small fires that refused to spread. The board met in a room that smelled of lamp oil and ink. 4 men and Mrs. Chen sat behind a narrow table. A ledger lay open. A jar held coins for the school stove fund. Outside, a horse-stamped metal ringing against the hitch. "Miss Hale," said Mr. Felton. "Mr. Morrow." Juniper nodded. Reed tipped his hat. "We have a simple question," Mr. Talley said. "Can you keep a fixed school through the monsoon? Last year, we chased your class from shed to shed." "I can," Juniper said. "If the school moves to higher ground, Mr. Morrow will house the classroom at his ranch. I will keep hours, keep records, and keep drills for storms." "You have drills," Mrs. Chen said, not unkind. "I do." Mr. Felton looked at Reed. "And why do you offer this sudden kindness?" "It is not sudden," Reed said. "We need the school to hold." "The ranch can hold it." Mr. Talley's mouth thinned. "And the boy." "Your sister's child." "Tate stays with me," Reed said. "We hear talk," Mr. Talley said. "A single ranch, rough hands, long nights. A child needs more than a bunk and a rope." Juniper felt her hands go cold. "He needs the shape of days," she said. "He needs a bell that means come in. He needs numbers and letters and work he can finish." Mrs. Chen watched Juniper and then looked at Reed. "What is your agreement?" "A paper marriage," Reed said. "Quiet, until the season turns and the school stands. Separate rooms, shared work. She keeps the classroom, the log, and the bell. I provide roof, water, wood, and wages for supplies. We put it in writing." The room stilled. The lamp hissed. Mr. Felton rubbed his chin. "People will talk." "They already do," Reed said. "And will the two of you hold to this line?" Mr. Talley asked. "No scandal. No sudden ruin. The town cannot carry another shame this year." Juniper thought of the map in her pocket, the way the pencil line trembled where the dry river bent. "Weather breaks things," she said. "We will not break our word." Mrs. Chen closed the ledger. "The school stove is near empty," she said. "The wind has a taste of rain. Put your bell high and your cellar low. I will vote yes." One by one the men lifted their hands. Mr. Talley did not look pleased, but his hand rose last. "Funds are released," Mr. Felton said. "On paper you two are wed by agreement. Reverend Wheatham will witness before the weekends." Juniper lowered her eyes. "Not shame. Just the weight of a new line drawn." Outside, the street was quiet. Reed walked 3 steps and stopped. He did not reach for her. He watched the clouds the way a man watches a herd across a creek, counting without numbers. "I did not come to town to fix your name," Juniper said. "I did not bring you to the board to fix mine," he said. They started toward the livery. A woman came out of the mercantile with a sack of flour and a sharp glance. "You have your roof," she said to Juniper. "Try to keep your virtue under it." Juniper felt the heat rise in her neck. Reed did not slow. He only said in a mild voice, "The bell will call the children, ma'am." Not sin. They reached the horses. Reed tightened his cinch and checked Juniper's stirrup as if he had done it for her 100 times. She mounted and set her jaw against the wind. On the ride back, the air changed. The smell of dust thinned. The first cool thread ran through the night like a wire. At the ranch, Pete had left a lamp on the porch and a stack of milled planks by the door. Tate sat on the top step with a slate across his knees, drawing a crooked cloud and a stick figure of a horse. He looked up, and his face opened in a way that was not common. "You came back," he said. "We did," Juniper said. Reed ruffled the boy's hair and turned to the boards. "We build the platform now," he said to Pete. "We do not wait until morning." Pete spat into the dust and stood. "Aye," he said. "Storm wants to see if we mean it." Juniper laid out her tools. Spoon vane, bent nail, small hammer, and a coil of cord. She moved like a person who had done this work before because she had, though not here. Tate watched her hands. "What is the bell for?" "When the air drops and the world feels wrong," she said, "we ring it. Riders know to come in. You listen and you run to the cellar with the small ones." "I am not small." "You will be taller than all of us." she said, and he stood straighter. Reed set a post in the ground while Pete held it steady. Juniper poured water into the hole to help the earth settle around the wood. The smell rose sharp and clean. She felt it in her teeth. Wind's clocking, Pete muttered. Hear that? South then east. No good. Juniper wound the cord through the bell eye, tested the knot, and gave it a light pull. The note was round and plain. Again, Reed said. She rang it once more. The sound went out over the yard and rolled back like a calm voice in a hard room. Tate smiled with his whole face. You can hear that in the corral. You can hear it at the gate, Pete said. You will hear it in your bones when you need to, Juniper said. They raised the bell together. Juniper climbed the ladder and tied off the rope on a clean, smooth cleat. Her hands were strong and sure. She did not look down until she had checked the knot twice. From the ladder she could see the land in a wide bowl, the dark line of the wash, the low swell of hills. A shape moved near the far fence, then stilled. A coat, she thought. A watcher. Then nothing. She did not call out. She only counted to 10 and climbed down. Reed had the papers ready on the table inside. He set a clean lamp between 2 plates and a stub of pencil by a folded sheet. There is room in the bunkhouse, he said. It is not fine. It is dry, she said. And yours to order, he added. They stood in the quiet and heard the bell rope tap the post in a small wind. Tomorrow, Juniper said, the children come. We will need slates, chalk, and a list of names. I will send word, Reed said. She looked at his hands. Rope burns old and white, a newer scrape across the knuckles. The steadiness of a man who had held lines in storms and not let go. He looked at the spoon vane spinning on its nail in the porch light. Something like ease moved through the room and sat down. Thank you, she said. For what? For not lying about sky or ground, he nodded once. It was enough the night held. Far off, a thin flash lifted the edge of the clouds and laid it down again. The bell did not ring. It did not need to. Not yet. Morning came pale. The bell rope hung still. Juniper lit the stove and set out slates and twos. A chipped mug of chalk sat at each desk. On the wall she pinned her map beside a blank ledger. The spoon vane ticked on the porch like a soft clock. Footsteps ran over the yard. Tate reached the door first, hair wild, eyes bright. He held last night's slate and waited without talking. Reed followed with a bucket of water and a basket wrapped in cloth. Bread, he said, setting it down. Mrs. Chen sent it. We will share at midday, Juniper said. More voices. Rosa came with her little brother and 2 tin cups. Joseph led a mule with wood. May wore a dress too short and boots too big. They stopped at the door as if a line had been drawn there. It is a school, Juniper said. Not a church, not a store, not a judge. Come in. They came in. She wrote her name on the board. Juniper Hale. Call me Miss Hale, she said. We begin with names, water, and the rule of the bell. When the bell rings, you come in. You help the small ones. If you are on a horse, you turn toward shelter. What if it rings when we sleep? Rosa asked. Then you wake, Juniper said. Tate set a hand on the ledger. May I write the list? You may if you go slow, she said. He wrote each name with care. Reed leaned in the doorway and watched. He left and came back with 2 benches and a tin of nails. His hands moved steadily as he fixed a rung and set a leg even. Each time the tarp lifted, he looked up, then relaxed when it fell. Juniper filled cups from the bucket. Drink and set your cup by the door, she said. We do not waste water. Joseph pointed at the porch. What is that spoon for? It is our wind, she said. It tells us which way a fire will run and where a storm will push. They learned numbers first. She drew rails and small boxes for cattle and a fence of 10s. They counted the herd across the dry river and back. May made the same number twice and hid a smile. Rosa whispered numbers to her brother. At midday they ate in the shade. Juniper kept watch on the yard. A man stood far off by the fence and then moved on. The vane turned once and settled. After food she led them to the bell. This is our warning, she said. If I pull once, you walk inside in order. If I pull twice, you take the small ones by the hand. If I pull 3 times, you run and do not stop until you reach the cellar. We do not ring for games. She pulled once. They walked back, laughing too loudly. Again, she said. She pulled twice. The older children took the younger ones and squared their shoulders. Now 3. She pulled 3 times. Feet moved fast. The room filled with dust and a quiet that was not fear, only focus. Reed watched from the porch. When it was done, he picked up the rope, felt the weight, and let it go. It carries, he said. You can hear it past the second trough. It has to, she said. In the afternoon, ranch hands drifted to the doorway, leaned and stayed without words. Then they left and came back with a sack of nails, a broken reader, and a jar of beans. One man set a small wooden horse on the shelf and walked away before she could thank him. Juniper wrote a list as the sun moved. Slates, chalk, thread, lamp oil, and a second bucket. She underlined cellar twice. The ground by the stone house would be hard. When the children were sent home, Tate stayed at a desk with the ledger open. May I ring the bell once? He asked. For practice, she said. He pulled gently. The bell gave a small sound and kept its peace. Reed came in. Anything else? A spade, she said. 2 if we can spare them. We should dig the cellar steps before the ground turns to paste. I will bring them. They walked to the place she had chosen near the low wall. Juniper pressed her palm to the earth. It held coolness here, she said. High ground, clear path from the door. Reed looked at the yard and the distance a child would run. He nodded. Juniper sat on the step. The map had marks. The ledger had names. The vein clicked once and went still. Tomorrow, she said. Tomorrow, Reed said. The bell did not ring. The quiet felt earned tonight. They broke ground before sunrise. The air was thin and kind. Juniper marked the steps with chalk on the stone, then cut the first line with a small pick. Reed set 2 spades and a shovel at her side without speaking. Pete brought a bar to pry loose the rock. Tate held a bucket and waited for orders like a soldier with bright eyes. Slow and clean, Juniper said. No caves, no shortcuts. Dust lifted softly like bread flour. The rhythm came quick, cut, pry, lift, pass. Reed took the shovel only when the angle turned heavy. He did not touch her hand, but he matched her pace so that no motion jarred the line. When a stone stuck, he set his shoulder and moved it like an old friend who needed a nudge, not a fight. By full light, they had the first 3 steps. Cool air rose from the cut. Juniper brushed the edge with her sleeve and felt the change against her skin. The place would hold bodies and breath when the sky came down. She closed her eyes for a heartbeat and let a small thanks rise and pass. Neighbors arrived as if the ground itself had called them. Mrs. Chen came with a tin of tea and a coil of twine. Joseph's father brought a plank door and hinges rescued from a shed fire years ago. A quiet man from the far flat set a sack of lime by the wall and said, "For damp," then left before names reached him. They laid the wall with dry stone. Juniper fitted each rock like a sentence with no wasted words. Reed handled the heavier pieces, testing balance with his palm before he let go. Tate counted quietly to keep his breath steady. When he reached 12, he started again. For luck, he said when Juniper smiled at him. By noon, the cellar mouth was framed. A ladder waited, sanded smooth. The bell rope brushed its post in a shy breeze and fell still again. Clouds gathered on the horizon, small as knuckles at first, then larger, layered, shaded at the base. After the children arrived, Juniper walked them down the new steps in pairs. They stood in the cool like cattle in shade. She showed them how to sit back against the wall, how to pass a cup, how to trade places with a shorter child so that smaller lungs reached easier air. She said little and watched their hands do what hands remember. Outside, Reed checked the hitch points for the tarps and ran a new line to the porch post. He tied his knots slowly and neatly, the way he tied a rope on water crossings. He checked the bell cleat and then checked it again. In the afternoon, the older boys brought in brush for kindling and set it near the stove. Juniper had them stack it by length and taught them how to measure without a rule. Rosa's brother counted out loud in a song with no words. When he faltered, Rosa touched his wrist and steadied the beat. A ranch hand called Eli came at dusk with 3 men behind him. They stood by the door and did not come in. "Evening class," Juniper said. "We do not read much," Eli said. "You read the land," she answered. "You can read a page." "If you want," they wanted. She set them to their letters with the same patience she used for small hands and large pride. Reed sat on the porch steps with the ledger and logged the day's work by lamplight. He sharpened her pencil with a knife that had a notch in the handle and laid the shavings in a clean circle on the railing. The circle held. When the stars rose, the men tried a line from a primer. One voice stumbled. Another picked up the word and set it down for the first to step on. It felt like moving cattle over a narrow bridge, all weight and trust. Eli laughed once when the sentence came out whole. He looked younger for that breath. Juniper closed the book. "Tomorrow," she said, because tomorrow was a promise the school could make. The men left. Pete doused the porch lamp. Tate yawned 3 times in a row and would not admit it. Reed lifted him into bed and set his boots side by side under the small table. He straightened them as if that made sleep surer. Juniper stayed by the door with her map. She added a thin line where the clouds had formed. The pencil left a dark mark that did not look like much. Not much was how the season turned start. Across the yard, a shadow paused at the far fence. A coat again. A watcher. The spoon vane clicked east, then north, then east. Juniper felt the watch in her back and did not turn. She folded the map and slipped it into the ledger, then set a small stone on top so the paper would hold flat. "Anything else?" Reed asked from the porch, voice even. "We should sink 2 barrels," she said. "One by the pump, one near the corral. If the first rush is muddy, we catch clean after." He nodded. "Before noon tomorrow. And the bell rope," she said. "I want a second line tucked under the eave. If the first frays, I can pull the other without climbing." Reed looked up at the rope, then at the eave. He nodded again. He did not say why a rope would fray on a still night. He had seen hands with knives, too. They stood side by side and listened to quiet sounds carry. A nighthawk cut through the dark. Somewhere a calf lowed once and settled. The desert breathed like a big animal asleep but ready to rise. "Miss Hale," Reed said. "Yes?" "You moved the school," he said, as if he had to hear it spoken to make it more true. "We did," she said. He let out a breath that could have been a laugh if he were another kind of man. He touched the bell post just once with the back of his hand, as if to feel the day still warm in it. Then he went inside. Juniper stayed a little longer. She looked at the young mesquite near the storm gauge stake and thought of roots drinking deep when rain finally came. She thought of a rose bush that had outlived a hard frost once long ago in another county. She did not bring the thought close. She let it sit where it could not be broken. When she finally stepped in and closed the door, the spoon vane ticked one last time and rested. The morning looked harmless, but the air tasted like metal. Juniper stepped onto the porch and watched the spoon vane twitch and settle. Low on the western rim, a gray smear lay like a sleeping snake. She checked the bell cleat, then the second line tucked under the eave. The knots held. Tate stood in the doorway with the ledger. "Wind?" he asked. "Mixed," she said. "Not rain. Maybe fire." By mid-morning, the children filled the room. Juniper set beans for counting, cups by the door, and the map beside the ledger. Reed brought in a pail of water, looked north. They practiced the bell slowly. 1 pull, walk. 2 pulls, take hands. No 3 pulls today. Near noon, the sky went strange. Heat pressed, then eased, then pressed again. Pete came at a trot from the far pens. "Dry lightning at the rim," he said. Juniper held her palm over the dirt and felt 2 breaths cross, one from the west, one from the north. "If it strikes brush," she said, "it will run east, then turn into the wash." Reed did not open the map. He had it in his head now. "Move the small herd to the high bowl," he said. "Keep calves inside the line." The first flash was white and silent. The second came with a late crack. Smoke lifted in a thread from the western hills. It looked like nothing. It was not. Juniper lit a lantern, though the sun was high. The flame leaned east, stood leaned north. She marked the shifts on the map and set Tate at the door with a message ready. Books in the crate, she told the class. If the bell rings twice, take hands. If 3, we go to the cellar with Rosa in front. Across the flats, riders turned the herd. Reed set gates and angles, hands calm. When a steer balked, he moved it with a low word, not a whip. Wind shoved from the west. Heat carried the smell of burning sage. Flame woke behind a ridge, quick, low, fast. Juniper rang the bell once, firm and even. The children came inside like water flowing. She rang it twice. Older hands found smaller hands. She marked the veer and sent Tate running with a board-scrawled note. Turn at Dry Creek. Pete caught the message, pointed, and the men swung as one. The fire hit bare earth at the creek bed, tripped, split, and lost its long legs. Juniper's knees weakened for a breath. She walked the room, poured water, and counted heads. Rosa's little brother stared at the door. Juniper touched his sleeve until his shoulders eased. Papers lifted. She set a book to hold them. Outside, the glow rose and fell. Men moved through smoke. A shout carried, then laughter, then only wind. The glow thinned, smeared east. Pete raised an arm by the fence and set it down. Done. Juniper waited a full count of 60 and then rang the bell once to release. Children unfolded and stood quiet, surprised by safety. Bread, she said, and the room remembered what rooms do. Reed rode in last, soot on his cheek, shirt dark with sweat. He put his hand on the bell post, then the door frame, then the back of Tate's head. High bowl held, he said. Lost scrub and one rotten fence. No cattle, no kids. Juniper held a tin cup with both hands to steady it. Lantern leaned east, then north, she said. That gave you the hinge. It did. He looked at the small marks on the map and the hard line in his mouth softened. Good work. Neighbors came in 2s and 3s, faces ash-dusted, eyes wide. They saw the herd at rest, the school standing, the bell still. Someone started a cheer and lowered it. Mrs. Chen stood on the porch. You made the danger smaller, she said. It was not small, Juniper answered. We only met it early. Rosa drew the fire's turn with arrows. Tate printed hinge and underlined it twice. Pete set the burned fence post by the wall like a warning and a trophy. Both. As the sun lowered, a cleaner wind slid across the yard. Ash smell turned to dust. The spoon vane steadied. Juniper wiped soot from the bell cleat and found the rope unfrayed. She touched the hidden second line and left it coiled. Afterward, Reed filled the bucket, washed his face, and looked young for a breath. Then the day sat back on him. He stood a little closer than yesterday. He did not touch her. The space between them felt sure. When night came, the ridge went dark. The spoon vane rested. The bell rope hung straight. They did not ring it for supper. They did not need to. Not tonight. Morning after the fire felt clean, but had quite changed shape. People came with thanks and questions. Juniper poured water, took lists, and watched the sky. The spoon vane ticked like a nervous thought. Reed checked fences with Pete and was back before noon. He set a parcel on the table. Paper, heavy and stiff, from town, he said. Juniper opened it. 2 sheets. The first called for a custody hearing for Tate. The second named a drought bond comes due. Signed by Silas Dodd. 7 days. He chose his time, she said. He did, Reed answered. They will tie the matters together, she said. Say a boy should not live where a ranch may fall. They will try. Juniper pinned the notice beside the map. We make a record, she said. Of safety, of school, of drills, Reed nodded. I will ride to 3 families that hold votes. You hold the line here. By afternoon, the yard had a new murmur. Some faces were soft, some were sharp. A woman stopped at the porch and spoke as if ordering nails. A paper wife today, she said. A ruined girl tomorrow. The school opens at dawn, Juniper said. Your son is welcome. Juniper turned to work. She taught how to wet cloth for smoke, how to walk low, and how to count to keep a breath steady. She added a rule. If a child is missing, say the name plainly and do not shout. At dusk, the hands came for letters. Eli brought 2 more. They stood awkwardly, hats in hand. Juniper set primers in their palms. By lamplight, the slow music of effort filled the room. Reed mended a bridle on the step. Each time a word fell into place, his knife paused a beat. 2 days like this. Work drill, small gains. The smell of rain stayed far. On the 3rd morning, the bell rope looked wrong. A new kink where it should hang smoothly. Juniper climbed the ladder and ran the cord through her hand. The outer strands were scraped. Not weather. A blade had tasted the fibers and left. She checked the 2nd line under the eave. Whole. She tied a small hidden hitch between the 2 and left the main rope looking fine. Tate watched. "Is it broken?" "It will hold," she said, "but we will not lean our full weight on it until I say so." Before noon, Silas Dodd rode in with 2 men in clean coats. He dismounted slowly and stood as if the yard were his. "Miss Hale," he said. "Mr. Morrow, word is you ring bells, fine work. Shame about the accounts." "State your business," Reed said. "Paper," Dodd said. "The bond, the boy. I trust you received notice." "We have it," Juniper said. "Good." His look slid over the rope. The children at slats. The gauge by the mesquite. Some things look steady until they are not. He touched his hat and left. Reed watched him go, then looked at the rope. He took a knife, cut a clean foot from the frayed end, and retied the knot. He tested the pull twice. Juniper faced the class. "Numbers," she said. Back to work. That night the wind came from the south. Mrs. Chen brought a basin of roses cut from a hard old bush. She set them by the ledger, pink against ink black. "For the hearing," she said. Juniper touched the pedal. "Thank you." After dark, Reed spread maps, routes to voters, wells that still gave water, places cattle could be moved if the court went badly. He traced lines with his thumb. He checked the door catch and the lamp and went out. Juniper wrote the log by roselight. Fire stopped at Dry Creek. Bell tested. Rope repaired. Drills run. She added 1 more line. Watch her at the fence after dusk. When she blew the lamp, the night air washed her face. The bell did not move. The 2nd line lay coiled like a sleeping snake. Sleep was thin. Each waking, she listened for rope and for a small boy breathing. Both sounds held. Near dawn, church bells in town tolled once, then again. The sound reached the ranch like a reminder. Juniper pressed her finger to the map where a thin pencil line marked the dry river. "Today we write our case," she said to the quiet room. "And we practice the cellar until it feels like a hymn." Rumors traveled faster than dust. At the store, someone said the marriage was a trick. At the pump, someone said Tate would be better in town. Juniper did not answer talk with talk. She answered with work. A 2nd drill before breakfast, a night class after supper, a ledger line for every hour. Each mark said one thing: this place holds. The day before the hearing came hot and bright, but the light felt thin. Juniper rose early and wrote the log in short lines. Stove fueled, cellar stocked, bell inspected. She set the roses by the ledger and touched a pedal to quiet her pulse. Reed saddled at first light. He checked the cinch, paused by the storm gauge, placed 2 fingers on the post like a promise, and rode to the last family. By mid-morning, talk moved faster than horses. A woman at the fence asked if Juniper planned to give Tate a father or only a roof. Juniper pointed to the bell. "He has a call to come home." Then she drilled the class again. 1 pull, 2, 3. The pattern is set in their feet. Pete hauled 2 barrels from the wash. She sank them by pump and corral. Children ringed each rim with stones like low walls against splash. Afternoon, a stray thunderhead shouldered the horizon and drifted north. Heat snapped against skin. In porch shade, Juniper sharpened a pencil with Reed's knife and laid the shavings in a neat ring as he did. She set the knife down quickly, surprised by the habit. Tate kept the ledger and did not look toward the far ridge, though he wanted to. At the page's end, he printed hinge and drew a small bell. Toward evening, the council clerk rode in with a sealed paper. Hearing at sunset, witnesses allowed. Juniper washed dust from her face, tied her hair, and took the map. Reed came last, shirt clean, eyes tired. He checked the bell rope, glanced at the hidden second line, and nodded like a man who has counted his gear and can face the weather. They rode to town side by side. Church windows glowed like banked coals. Inside, pews creaked. Air smelled of oil and damp wood. Mr. Tally cleared his throat. "This is for the welfare of Tate Morrow," he said, "and for Mr. Morrow's bond." Silas Dodd sat neatly near the aisle, boots clean, smile. "Miss Hale," Mr. Felton said. "Speak." Juniper set the map on the table and opened the ledger. "The school stands on high ground," she said. "We keep drills in a cellar. When fire came, we turned it at Dry Creek. When wind shifts, we record and adjust. We do not promise the sky. We promise what we will do." Mrs. Goodwin rose. "My girl sleeps because the bell means something now." Others spoke plain words with dust at the hems. Todd's mouth thinned. Reed said little. "I keep the boy. I keep the herd. I keep my word." He rested his hand on the ledger, not the pistol at his hip. Dodd stood last. "Storms come and go," he said. "So do schools tied to one man. A bond is a bond. A paper wedding does not change arithmetic." Juniper did not look at him. "Arithmetic brought us through the fire," she said. "Wind plus heat plus brush. We learned the sum and stood where it mattered." Mr. Tally raised his hand. "Custody decision after storm season," he said. "The boy remains with Mr. Morrow for now. The bond is due in 7 days. If payment fails, we consider the citing." His gavel tapped like a pebble in a pail. Outside, night smelled of hot iron. Reed exhaled as if he had been underwater. Juniper tucked her trembling fingers into her sleeves. On the ride back, lightning stitched a thin seam to the south. Twice, a watcher's shadow lifted at the fence and sank again. At the porch, the bell rope hung straight. The second line lay coiled, ready. They put Tate to bed and sat with the door open to the dark. Reed made coffee. He did not drink it. Juniper turned the cup in her hands and watched the steam vanish. He slid a small parcel across the table. "For your records." Inside lay a fresh ledger. On the first page, in his square hand, school, weather, winds. "Then we keep counting," she said. Wind moved through the yard, gentle first, then edged. The spoon vane ticked east. Something creaked that should not have. Juniper stood, crossed to the post, and felt the main rope give a tired sigh under her palm. "Cut," she said softly. Reed stepped beside her. He reached up and pulled the hidden line from under the eave. Together they tied it to the bell in the dark. Hands close, motion spare. When they tested the pull, the sound rolled out steady and sure. "Let him try," Reed said. "Let him," she answered. They left the cut rope hanging like a lie made visible. Then they sat until the horizon showed a seam of pale, and the day before the storm became the day of it. The day broke thin and sharp. Juniper woke to a silence that was not peace but a held breath. The spoon vane pointed south and did not move. The air tasted of stone. Somewhere far off a hawk cried, and then nothing else made a sound. She checked the bell knots by touch. The hidden line held. The main rope hung like a bad memory, neat where Reed had cut it clean. She left it visible, a warning. Tate stood at the door with the ledger. "Wind? South steady," she said. "It will switch hard when the wall comes." He looked to the wash. "Will it come today?" "Yes." By mid-morning, the sky went the color of old iron. Heat pulled up from the ground and then dropped as if a trap had sprung. Pete jogged in from the far pens, breath short. "Cattle in the center bowl," he said. "We can move if we must." "You will," she said. "Only when I ring twice, you move slowly. When I ring 3, you run the ridge and leave the lower path." He blinked. 3 means run? 3 means run. Children arrived quieter than usual, as if the day had told them what it was. Juniper set cups by the door and a coil of rope by the ledger. She lit the lantern, though the room was bright. The flame leaned south, straightened, leaned south again. She kept her voice even. We practice once more. 1, 2, 3. They moved like water through a narrow gate. Rosa took her brother's hand without looking down. Tate lined the small ones by height against the back wall of the cellar and counted in tens. He did not need to look at the numbers to know them now. Toward noon, the horizon closed. A smear at first, then a wall, dark, smooth, near. Dust rose, then fell flat. The first drop hit the step and left a perfect coin of wet on the stone. The second blew sideways and broke. Wind came like a shove. The tarp snapped hard on their ropes. Juniper stood in the doorway and watched how the mesquite bent. She could not see far. She did not need to. The smell of the first rain reached her, sharp and alive. It tasted like the right answer after a long confusion. She pulled the bell once. Feet walked. She pulled it twice. Hands found hands. She turned the lantern low and led the first line down the steps. Not fast, not slow. The storm hit the roof sudden and full. Sound filled the world. Water on wood. Wind on wire. The low inside drum of thunder under the earth. Reed crossed the yard with a tarp bundle on his shoulder. He moved into the wind like a man into a crowd, steady and sure. He set the last tie at the corner and checked the gate. Pete shouted something and his words went thin in the rain. Juniper set her shoulder to the cellar door and felt the push of air circling, trying each crack. She counted heads again and again until counting was a hum in her body. Rosa whispered a prayer without words, and the youngest children listened to the sound of it as if it were a story. The bell cleat creaked. The rope jerked, slackened, jerked again. Juniper stepped up the stairs and out into a sheet of rain. Wind tore at her dress and found her bones. The main cleat at the post had twisted. The new knot had held, but the wood had not. The hidden line strained, true as a plow horse, but the angle was bad. Each pull would cut the edge like a knife. She did not think. She moved. She took the hidden line off the cleat, ran it through the iron ring on the porch post, and tied a clean hitch she could work by feel. She tested it. The bell answered round and sure. Lightning flared, and the world went white for a breath. Thunder followed so close it seemed to be inside her chest. Tate stood in the door, hair pasted to his head, eyes bright with fear and pride both. "Do I go down?" "You lead the littles to the back wall," she said. "Count to keep them quiet. I will call you if I need you." He nodded and ran. She watched him vanish into the cool and felt the ground under her boots like a promise. Wind shifted, south to east in one sharp turn. She felt it in the way the rain stung her left cheek instead of her right. The lantern flame bent hard. The wash would take the surge wrong if the men were on the lower path. She grabbed the chalkboard slate from the wall and wrote with a shaking hand, "Ridge, no lower." She shoved the slate into Pete's hands as he ran past and pointed up with all her might. He looked once and swerved toward higher ground. Reed saw the change without the slate. He had felt the wind all his life. He moved the herd not like a single thing, but like water, through, around, and up, steady. A culvert beyond the gate gave a hard groan, and then the ground where it sat folded. A channel that had been dusty an hour before became a moving thing with weight and teeth. Fence posts shuddered. One went down and vanished. Juniper rang the bell twice to pull in any rider who could still hear. The sound went out and came back folded by rain. She felt it in her ribs, not her ears. She rang again. In the yard, the young calf they had called Cricket bleated thin and lost, caught between a gate and a flood that did not yet look like one, but was. Tate heard the sound and stepped out before he knew he had. He took 3 quick steps into the yard and then ran. He reached the calf and got both hands on the slick rope around its neck. The ground under them lifted, shifted, dropped. Juniper moved, but the world moved faster. The calf pulled. Tate held. The rope slid. He skidded toward the low where water gathered. The slick new stream took his boots out from under him, and in one breath he was in it to his knees, then his waist. She rang the bell 3 times, and the sound did not feel like a sound. It felt like a hand on the center of the back saying now. Reed turned before the 3rd strike finished. He ran not at the boy but to the post where the long coil of lariat hung dry under the eave. His hands did not fumble. He looped and threw and missed once because the gust took it. He pulled in, looped again. Juniper lifted the lantern high and watched the smoke trail whip and then steady for half a breath between gusts. "Now," she said, and he threw on that beat. The rope arced clean in white light. It landed across Tate's shoulders and slid. The boy grabbed with both hands and held. The rope went tight and hummed like a wire. Water lifted higher and tried to take both the boy and calf. Juniper braced herself on the porch post and wrapped the line around the ring she had used for the bell, turned it twice, felt the pull travel through wood and iron and into her bones. Reed bore back, boots skidding. Pete threw his weight behind him. The world narrowed to rope and breath and pull. "Hold," she said, not loud. "Hold." Lightning flared again. For an instant she saw everything. The wash boiling, Tate's small face set, Reed's jaw clenched, the bell rope trembling. The young mesquite bent nearly flat but not broken. Then the dark closed and the sound of water filled all space. They pulled. The rope took all their weight and still wanted more. Juniper wrapped the line twice, then a third time, and let the post carry what her arms could not. The ring burned under the wet rope. Reed leaned back, boots skating, teeth set. Pete dropped his shoulder and gave the slow kind of help that keeps a thing from slipping back. "Kick," Juniper said to Tate, though he could not hear, and he did. Small, hard kicks against moving water. The calf lunged once, went to its knees, scrambled, and found footing. The rope hummed again, lower now. Reed took one step back, then another. Pete matched him. Juniper held the turn steady and fed the slack an inch at a time. The wash gave up the boy in a rush and took only his hat. Tate tumbled to the hard ground that was not quite ground and crawled, still holding the rope looped across his shoulders. He kept hold of the calf until Pete could get a hand on the halter and swing the small body against the fence. The animal shook, found its legs, and stood near Tate like a friend who would not leave the room. Juniper let the line go soft. Her palms felt flayed. She did not look at them. She climbed down the steps to the cellar door and called, "All's well," in a voice that was more air than sound. The children lifted their heads as one. Rosa's brother smiled with all his teeth. Rosa did not cry. She closed her eyes and breathed like she had been taught. Reed knelt in the rain. He took Tate's chin between two fingers and turned the boy's face left, then right, as if reading a simple page. "Hole," he said, and the word went through Juniper like heat. He set a hand on the boy's wet hair and left it there for one long breath. Tate leaned into that hand as if there were a room in it. Wind shifted again, hard east, then back south. Juniper looked at the lantern. The smoke line stuttered and then held. A rider's shout cut across the flood noise, thin and lost, followed by another in answer from the wrong direction, the lower path. If they kept that line, they would hit the broken culvert and vanish. Juniper grabbed the bell rope and gave 3 hard pulls. The sound went out crooked in the rain, hit the yard, the wall, the low sky, and still carried. She pulled again. One of the ranch hands, Eli, broke from the herd line, pointed to the ridge, and slashed his arm up like a flag. 2 small shapes swung their horses upslope, hooves sliding. The third hesitated, then followed. A sheet of brown water took the low cut a breath later. For a long blink, the place where the riders had been became a moving skin and then nothing. Juniper kept ringing. The sound found a dozen ears. Men eased back from the wash edges. Someone shouted her name, not for help but in thanks, and the sound made her knees weak in a way the flood had not. She braced herself on the post and gave the rope one last measured pull. The worst of the wall passed. The rain stayed heavy but less wild. The yard came back into shape like a face under a towel. The mesquite bent and then righted bit by bit. The spoon vane spun once, twice, then pointed south and rested like a compass that had remembered its job. Juniper blew the lantern out and let the smoke draw a slow line into the cellar, so the children would breathe a change and know the moment had turned. She went down the steps. "Come up," she said, and they came, blinking, quiet, taller than they had been an hour before. She put a mug in each small hand. Water tasted like something holy. Tate stood with the calf and did not let go until he had to. "I did not leave the rope," he said, proud and almost angry with himself for being scared. "You did not," Juniper said. "And you came when called." She took a strip of cloth and wiped mud from his ears. He stood still for it like a much smaller child and then remembered to be older and pulled away. Reed checked gates and counted cattle without moving his mouth. Pete walked the fence, eyes on the posts. Eli rode the higher cut and called down word that the culvert was gone, that the ridge held, that 3 riders would have been lost but for the bell. Silas Dodd did not show himself. Still, his shape lived at the edges, at the cut rope, at the twisted cleat, in the timing of the blow. Juniper felt the thought and let it pass. The work in front of her mattered more than any man who hid. When the last hard rain eased to a full, steady pour, she set the children to small tasks, stacking cups, sweeping water from the doorway, shaking out blankets. Work is a kind of music when fear has left a ringing in the skull. The boys did not boast. The girls did not chatter. They moved and felt the ground under their feet hold. The afternoon went gray. The storm settled into long breath. Reed brought a basin and a strip of cloth. He took Juniper's hands without asking and wrapped them. The cloth darkened where it met the raw. He did the work as if he were mending tack, firm and exact. He tied the last knot with a small tug and did not let go for a second longer than he should. She felt the weight of that second like a clean coin in her pocket. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For the throw," she said. "For the rope." "For not letting go." He nodded once. He set the coil back on its peg and hung Tate's wet hat beside it, as if the boy might want to see where his loss had gone. Evening came quietly. The storm still talked across the flats, but lower now, like men after work. The herd chewed. The bell rope hung true from its new line. The ruined cleat lay on the table, wood split at the screw holes, the brake clean where a hand had twisted at just the right angle. Reed did not say the word sabotage. He set the cleat in the ledger like an entry. Neighbors rode in to count heads and left with their faces changed. Each one paused at the bell and lifted a finger to the wet rope, just to feel the thing that had spoken through the roar. Mrs. Chen came late with a pot of broth and a look that held both pride and warning. "Tomorrow," she said, "they will argue. Tonight you eat." Juniper ladled soup until her arms shook. Tate slept sitting up and had to be carried. Reed put him to bed and set the boots straight and reached out without thinking, to lay his hand on the post as he passed, as if touching the wood would keep the day true. After the last cup, Juniper stepped onto the porch. The mesquite dripped. The air smelled of grass and iron and the first hidden flowers crushed under hooves. She looked at the storm gauge through the curtain of rain. The tube had caught more than she had dared hope. The numbers would mean water out of the earth weeks from now, not just water from the sky today. She rang the bell once, softly. Not a warning. A call to the long table. Pete laughed for the first time all week. The sound felt like the roof and bread. Juniper turned her bandaged hands to the light and then to the rain. She did not pray out loud. She let the quiet inside her say what it needed and then stop. The night would hold. The storm would move on its feet of water and wind. In the morning there would be mud and tracks and the mark of the wash where it had taken what was not tied down. There would also be proof. The herd alive, the children counted, the bell heard, the ledger line written. Tomorrow they would go to the council. She would carry the broken cleat, the map, the log, and the sound of the bell still in her bones. Morning lifted slowly over Ash Mesa. Clouds stepped back to pale blue. Mud held prints like pages left to dry. Juniper wrapped fresh cloth over her palms, checked the bell knot and slid the broken cleat into her bag with the ledger and map. Reed saddled early. He checked the cinch twice, touched the storm gauge post, and gave Tate a hand up. The boy took it like a promise. They rode to town on a road more water than road. Doorways filled with faces. Some softened. A few turned away. The council room smelled of damp coats and oil. Mrs. Chen waited with a folded paper. Mr. Tally looked worn. Silas Dodd sat neat, boots clean, smile thin. Mr. Felton rapped the table. We meet to decide the bond and hear the last word on the boy. Juniper set out a map, a ledger, cleat. She opened the new ledger Reed had given her. First page, school, weather, winds. Yesterday the storm came, she said. We sheltered the children. The bell called riders off the lower path. The herd held. We lost a culvert and a fence, not lives. Here is our log. Here's the mark where fire turned. Here's the broken cleat. Eli removed his hat. Without that bell, we'd count 3 men less. Mrs. Goodwin said her girl slept. Pete told how the ridge held because the call came in time. Parents and hands spoke, plain facts laid like boards across a wash. Dodd smoothed a cuff. Weather is not a plan. The bond stands. Arithmetic is simple. Arithmetic is why we are alive, Juniper said. Wind plus rain plus fall of land. Subtract the lower path. Add bell. Reed said 4 words. The boy stays home. He looked at Tate, not Dodd. Mrs. Chen lifted her paper. 3 merchants and the freight office attest that Mr. Dodd's bond was shaped to force a sale at flood or fire. The dates and clauses are curious. Her voice stayed mild. The word for it is fraud, Mr. Tally read, eyes narrowing. He nodded. Bond void, he said. Effective now. He turned to Reed. You will pay what is fair after the season, not what a trick demands. He glanced at Tate. Custody remains with Mr. Morrow. Dodd stood, tipped his hat to no one, and left. Mud found his clean boots outside. People breathed easier. Reed's hand rested on Tate's shoulder. Juniper slid the cleat back into her bag. They rode home slowly. The land looked different because it had been tested and had not failed. Pools lay in hoofprints. Birds argued in the mesquite. The spoon vane clicked once, then fell quiet. At the ranch, the children were there. They had swept the step and set cups in a row. Rosa drew 3 bells on the slate. Joseph brought a piece of culvert pipe. Juniper rang the bell once softly. Not a warning, a gathering. She unwrapped her hands and wrote the lesson where all could see. Count what holds. Work ran light and steady. Reading moved like a creek. Numbers stacked like rails. Tate kept the ledger and drew a mesquite with roots reaching past the page. People lingered. Mrs. Chen set a small bundle on the table. For winter. Inside lay a folded wool blanket stitched in simple squares. Sun slid down the ridge and left a gold rim on everything. Reed stood by the storm gauge and set the post straight. He tapped the earth, 1, 2, 3, and pressed it firm with his boot like a prayer without words. Reed came to the porch. He looked at the bunkhouse door, then at her, then at the yard where Tate chased cricket. The arrangement is finished, he said. You are free to go when you wish. Juniper looked at the gauge, the bell, the cellar door, the map, the blanket, and the boy's hat beside the coil. She listened to the quiet inside and found it steady. I will stay, she said. Not because of paper. Because this is my work. Because this is my home. He stood like a man in the wind, gone still. His hands opened. They did not kiss before everyone. Tate whooped when Cricket butted his knee. Pete banged a pan with a spoon. Juniper lifted the bell rope and gave it one small pull. The note went out and came back. Supper. People moved toward tables in that easy way that looks like grace. The storm had gone. The land was marked by it the way a life is marked by what it survives. The gauge caught the last drip from the eave. The mesquite held its shape. Juniper took Reed's hand. They paused, then slowly walked toward the long table as the bell swung once more in a small wind that meant a quiet evening. If this story carried you through the storm, tap like so more folks can find it. Tell me your favorite moment in the comments. Subscribe for more frontier love stories and turn on the bell so you never miss the next chapter.